I realized that music was a passion to me when I was introduced to it at around age 12. I went to a comprehensive school in London, England. And at that time, it's an interesting story. At that time, that school was provided with a lot of funding across the board. And that was unique because now you had music and arts programs that were getting equal funding as mathematics and English. It's part of an experiment led by the Labour Party. A book has been written about it called The Crichton Report. And because they had funding in music and arts, they were able to do things very creative. In fact, they were encouraged to service the large Afro-Caribbean community. Well, when I read about this at a later point, what was interesting to me is that the whole idea behind it was to model around desegregation in the States. So they were trying to merge together like two different cultures. Where I grew up is the inner city of London. So it was a school that had a history of problems. Some of these were growing up in England, having different cultures, being brought up in a very hostile environment, right? So the idea was that the Labour Party at that time wanted to experiment, put funding in, and provide arts as well as, and some sort of life skills programming. So lo and behold, we had a musical head who was a woman from Barbados, and she was very accomplished, and she decided to introduce SteelPan into our school. And was one of the first schools at that time to have SteelPan. And now we were supposed to service the Afro-Caribbean community. But of course, I navigated towards it because my parents were from Trinidad and I knew of SteelPan. And interestingly enough, I was the only one that was from Trinidad. The other girls were either from Jamaica or St. Vincent or Antigua. So I felt a sort of call to kind of rise up to the challenge and, make that connection because after all, that was the country that my parents were from. So I would say that's how I got introduced to music. And from there, the rest is kind of history. I realized I had this passion for it, this love of music. I loved being part of a band, and that's where it kind of all began. My mother's name is Jean Ramsaran. She lives in the UK. Whenever I say, well, my mother's from Baruga, I always get, oh, deep south. Always get that. So yes, she's from really deep south. Well, what's interesting is that I never felt any pressure from her whatsoever to do it. She always was involved in the parent-teacher association back then. She was really supportive of what they were trying to do within that part of London. She believed in the experiment, so to speak. And so I had my best friend who's from Antigua was the one who actually really wanted to go for it. And she was like, oh, I'd rather do that than do home economics, wouldn't you? Which was cooking back then. Right? So I was like, sure, let's go for it. Well, when I went there, I looked around and we were all girls, right? We were all girls from the different islands thrown into this environment, this very new instrument. And there we were being led by a woman that we really looked up to because she was head of the department. And we knew that we'd seen her perform when she first came to the school. She conducted orchestra, and we were like, wow, look at this woman from Barbados, and she's amazing and so passionate about the music. And I think she was very inspirational. Now, you asked me what my mother's involvement was. She always let me lead. And she said it was you that wanted to do it. And I saw that you really liked doing it. So I never really wanted to stand in your way. I wanted to really support you through it. So her support was very indirect in terms of making uniforms for all of us. Whenever we performed anywhere, she would make the uniforms. She never stopped me from performances that took us to Germany. She never had any issue with me going to competitions that were on the weekend. She wasn't worried about me doing my homework or keeping up with my schoolwork. She saw it as being a positive thing. So I would say she was very supportive, which, I mean, now when I look back at it, I guess she was different. She's different. Maybe I'm different too because of that.
Tell us more about the Germany pan experience you had. How old were you then, approximately?
I was about 14. I was about 14. So that was a youth exchange. Again, it was led by the musical department, and they arranged a youth exchange with a brass band from Germany, from a very small town called Xanten. And so we went over there, and we really wowed them then, because first of all, they didn't see a lot of people of color in that town. And they also, this was the first time they were seeing SteelPan, like going back then. That was the first time they saw SteelPan. So they were just like, they wanted to touch it. They were just in awe of what we were doing there. So, and then the following year, the brass band actually came to England, and they got to, and we bonded again and connected. And you know what's interesting, Michael? I got messaged about 2 years ago from one of the girls that I stayed with. She found me. She was looking for me, and she found me through our Souls of Steel website. And as she read it, you know, I think I made mention of it somewhere. And she said, yeah, that's Dena. So we very recently reconnected.